Hey everyone, you ready for a deep dive?
Always. What are we tackling today?
Well, get this. We're going deep into Climate Sisters, resisting ecocide.
Oh, wow. Okay, I've heard about this one. It's about young female activists, right?
You got it. It's all about their stories and how they're taking on the climate crisis head on.
I like it already. So many times we only hear about, the same big names.
I hear you. But this book, it's different. It shines a light on those unheard voices, and so many of them are from the global south. The places already feeling the heat.
And those are the voices we need to be hearing, don't you think?
Absolutely. They're living it, so they get it.
Yeah.
Their stories add a whole new layer of understanding to this whole climate crisis thing. It's not just about statistics anymore.
Right. It becomes real. It's about people's lives, their communities.
Exactly. So, ready to meet some of these climate sisters?
Lead the way. I'm ready to be inspired.
Okay, so we've got Adenike Oladosu from Nigeria, Serra Olivella over in Spain, and Lilian Ono from Japan.
Wow, talk about a global perspective. Different continents, different challenges, but all connected by this massive thing we call the climate crisis.
Totally. So, let's start with Adenike, shall we? What was it about her story that really jumped out at you?
Honestly, her passion. This woman is a powerhouse. She leads this movement in Nigeria, I Lead Climate, and she is fierce about it. Adenike is all about peace, security, equality, especially in Africa. And get this, she links it all back to climate change.
Wow, that connection, the way she brings those issues together, it's pretty powerful.
Right, and she's not just talking about it from some ivory tower. Nigeria, they're already facing some serious climate challenges.
Yeah, I was reading about the shrinking of Lake Chad. That's got to be terrifying for the people who depend on it.
It's devastating. Adenike talks about how the lake is literally drying up and it's causing all kinds of conflict. Farmers and herdsmen who've, lived and worked together for centuries, they're now being pitted against each other because there just aren't enough resources to go around.
That's awful. And it really highlights the human cost of climate change.
Exactly. But here's the thing about Adenike. She doesn't just focus on the problems. She's all about finding solutions and empowering others, especially women and girls, to be the change. She actually said, conflict is disempowering women and girls. Understanding this makes me an ecofeminist.
Wow. That's quite a statement.
Right. It's about recognizing those voices that are so often marginalized. The women on the front lines who are dealing with the brunt of climate change.
And Adenike, she's making sure those voices are heard loud and clear.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, wasn't she honored with like a major award alongside Greta Thunberg?
She was. It was back in 2019. They both received Amnesty International's Ambassador of Conscience Award for, their incredible work in raising awareness about climate change.
That's amazing. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Okay, so from Nigeria, let's hop over to Spain. Serra Olivella. She's got a pretty incredible story, too. Right?
Oh, yeah, Maria. She's something else. A real force to be reckoned with.
I hear you. What was it about her story that resonated with you?
I think it's how she just gets it. Like she's living through the climate crisis right now as we speak.
And Spain's really feeling the heat, isn't it?
Big time. The book talks about how it's one of the most water-stressed countries in Europe. Crazy, right? You think of Spain, you think sunshine, beaches, siestas, not necessarily like drought and water shortages.
Right. It's like that whole Mediterranean lifestyle is under threat.
Totally. And Maria, she's seeing it firsthand. She said something like, for the first time, we see what climate change is, we experience it. Powerful stuff, right?
Definitely. So how is she translating that experience, that urgency, into action?
Well, for one, she's a co-founder of FFF Barcelona, part of that Global Fridays for Future movement. And they don't mess around. Under her leadership, they've organized these massive climate marches, like over 100,000 people. It's incredible.
That's huge. So she's mobilizing people, getting them out on the streets. What else?
She's also a big advocate for getting young people a seat at the table, at those big international climate conferences. She's like, hey, we're the ones who are going to be dealing with this mess, so we deserve a voice in the decisions being made today.
And she's right. They're the ones who are going to inherit this planet. Okay, so we've heard from Adenike in Nigeria, Ria in Spain, and now we're off to Japan. Lilian Ono, now that's an interesting story. From what I understand, she came to climate activism from a totally different world, right?
I talk about a plot twist. Yeah, Lilian was a fashion model, like runways, photo shoots, the whole 9 yards.
Wow, that's quite a leap from the catwalk to climate activism. What inspired that transition?
That's what I love about her story. It just goes to show that this issue, it can touch anyone from any walk of life. And once it grabs you, it grabs you. Lilian is all about action.
Yeah, I read that she even went on a hunger strike. That's commitment. But before we get into that, tell me about this organization she co-founded, Green TE. What are they all about?
So Green TA, it's all about bringing people together around climate action. It's about, like, giving regular people in Japan the tools and the platform to make their voices heard.
So empowering people to take action. I like it.
Exactly. And Lilian, she walks the talk. She and another activist, they actually went on a hunger strike to pressure the Japanese government to step up their game on climate change.
Wow. That takes guts. So she put everything on the line, but what was she hoping to achieve? What's the situation like in Japan? I wouldn't necessarily think of it as being on the front lines of the climate crisis.
You'd be surprised. Japan might be, high tech and all, but they're actually super vulnerable to climate change. They've got these, like, increasing risks of crazy weather, typhoons, heat waves, the works.
I guess living on an island nation will do that.
Right? And here's the kicker. They're hooked on fossil fuels. Huge emitter of greenhouse gases.
Okay, so it's not just a developing nation problem.
No, it's a everyone problem. And Lilian, she's all over it. She's really focused on how cities are designed, urban planning. She's all about Japan ditching the fossil fuels and going green.
What does that look like, though? I mean, actually doing that, it's a massive undertaking, isn't it?
For sure, but she's talking renewable energy, energy-efficient buildings, public transport, more green spaces in cities, that kind of thing, making them more livable,
Yeah, totally. It reminds me of that story in the book about Lilian and those trees, remember? The redevelopment project.
Oh, yeah. They were going to chop down all these trees, and she was like, over my dead body. Figuratively speaking, of course.
Well, she did go on a hunger strike.
True, true. But yeah, that story, it just shows how she thinks, It wasn't just about a few trees, it was about the bigger picture, short-sighted planning, lack of respect for the environment, that kind of thing.
It's like those small actions, or in this case, stopping that action. It can actually spark change on a larger scale.
Exactly. And that's what connects all these climate sisters, don't you think? They're not waiting around for someone else to fix things. They're rolling up their sleeves and doing it themselves.
It's really inspiring when you think about it. 3 women, 3 different continents, 3 unique approaches, but all united by this common goal.
Totally. They're showing us that the climate movement, it's not just some abstract idea, It's about people, real people, fighting for their future and ultimately our future.
And they're not afraid to get their hands dirty, whether it's leading protests, changing laws, or even putting their own bodies on the line. It makes you think, if they can do it, why not us?
That's the question, right? What's stopping the rest of us?
Right. So next time you hear about climate change and you feel that wave of, hopelessness, or maybe you just feel overwhelmed, remember the climate sisters. Remember their stories, remember their courage, and ask yourself, what can I do, even in my own small way, to be a part of the solution? Because every little bit counts.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, my friends. And remember, the power to create change is in your hands.